It's empty. Like the tube. Well, how's everybody doing?
Come on, Mark.
So here's the thing is I hear a little bit of shouting here and I hear a little bit of shouting here. But I'm not talking about like outside. Like how are you doing inside? I think we all came in here with a little bit of baggage if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
But I want us to explore the scriptures today, if that's okay with you. I want us to walk out of here going, man, forget about that guy that was speaking. Who even cares about his name? But the words that we're going to speak today should change our lives because they come from the very word of God. Amen? You open up your Bibles to Ecclesiastes. It's right in the middle. You can almost accidentally turn there. That's how I find it. But my name is Mark Garrido, and together with my lovely blondie right there, that's my wife Carrie, we're servants right here in the Oahu International Christian Church in Honolulu. And we help oversee the churches in Hilo, in Kona, and in Guam, and then recently the Philippines, which is amazing. But today we're going to read out of one of the greatest. When you think about great, you think about King Solomon, son of King David. No one surpassed him in wisdom or knowledge or swagger. The guy had some massive swag. And today we're going to look at this Old Testament story about the man who's achieved more than anybody in greatness. And then what is his contemplation about? What does he think about? What is he experiencing in his life? From the day he was born until near death. And we look at Solomon and we go, wow, we got to compare his life to our life today. And how is God going to speak to us today? Of course, we know that this is man's reasoning. The whole book of Ecclesiastes is talking about man reasoning with God. Like, where is my life? And this morning I want to ask you, where are you in your life? What is it that you're working for? Kinesiology? No. Microbiology? Foodology? For some of you guys. Me too. Come on, Brandon. I mean, we all work for something. But you know what? I used to be young. Now I'm not as young as I used to be. But I'm not truly old yet. I can still touch my toes when I bring my feet up. But I noticed that I started thinking about life a little differently. Like before, I used to listen to my kids and they would just say things like, can you buy me something? Now I listen to them, I go, wow, I wonder what they're wanting that for. I'm starting to see things a little bit differently. I'm starting to take my life a little bit more seriously. I had a couple of surgeries in my life, and I'm like, man, how long am I actually going to live? My mom passed away when she was 36. Wow. I was only 11. I'm like, that's a short life. Wow. Hey, man, I passed that. I'm 48 now, right? Oh, yeah. Got to check, you know. That's how bad it is. I got to check with my wife now. How old am I? And I start contemplating, I start thinking about life. Like, I don't want to die. But the truth is, one day I'm going to. I don't want to leave my kids behind. I don't want somebody else to be their father. I want to be the father for my kids. I want to be the only husband for my wife. But if I pass on to some great man who shares the same value with God as me, takes care of my wife, so be it. And my wife can have a godly man, my children. And so I started thinking about all these things. Yeah. I've had a couple of near-death accidents where some people died in the car and I still was alive. And I contemplate my life. All the times where I think I should have died, yet God spared my life. And so Solomon is here, and he's thinking about this, about his life, about the meaning of life, which is the title of our lesson. And so we pick up in Ecclesiastes 1, and we're going to be 1 through 4. If you're visiting us for the first time or returning again, we'd like to give you a warm aloha and welcome you to the church to be a part of the family. Not just to study Bible today, but to hang out, to be a part of our family. You guys can all come to my house, reach your hand into the refrigerator, use my toilet, sleep on my couch, my bed. I got a really grassy looking carpet. Everybody on campus, the first, this carpet is a magical thing. I tell you, MMA fighters are cool, but I mean, when Hendricks comes into my house, he just comes and he does this weird MMA like somersault or something like that, and he flops on the ground like a dead man. Everybody does like carpet angels. See, they're guilty. They come into the house and they're just like making carpet angels. I'm like, this carpet is awesome. But you're welcome to come to my house and be a part of my media family. And we pick up our text here in Ecclesiastes 1, and I want you to ask yourself something as we read along. What is the meaning of your life? Verse 1, chapter 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from their labors, at which they toil under the sun? Generations they come, and generations they go. But the earth remains forever. And so Solomon, in the third phase of his life, on the way out, starts to contemplate, gosh, I've seen kids raised up in the kingdom and then even die. I watch parents and grandparents come and go. And even I am on my way out. I'm in my third phase of life. My generation is about to go. And he starts contemplating. He says, what is the meaning of life? All the things that I've done with my hands, what does it all amount to? Because the one thing that's certain is death. Where am I going to go after that, or is there an even after? And so there's lots to contemplate. Solomon was really facing this moment in his life. And I pray that you're facing a moment in your life, whether you're young or you're old, no matter what your background. Like, where am I really? Where am I really at in my life? We continue in verse 12. It says, I, the teacher, was king over all Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and explore wisdom. So Solomon was like, not only am I a king, but I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be a campus student. I want to learn from the professors. I want to fill my mind with wisdom. It said, all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I know that some of the students feel that way when they come. They're like, I'm going to go. I'm no longer going to be a high school student. I'm going to go to college. Then they come to college and they're like, what a heavy burden God has put on students. Oh my goodness, this campus life is stressing me out. And in verse 14 it says, I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. And I think about Solomon and how he goes, man, I got to pursue the knowledge of mind. And he goes after it. But he equates everything that he learned, going through the college life, getting educated, having the best professors, fill his mind with information that learn how the world actually operates. And yet he says, what a heavy burden. I mean, if you were being fed by the world's best astronomers, theorists, people who speak to you, I'd feel greater. I feel tougher. My chest I might talk out my chest a little bit more. Feel a little bit more confident. But he says, it's a chasing after wind. I don't know what chasing after wind is, to be honest with you. I've been hit by wind. I'm not going to go there with the other wind thing, but it's funny because wind is everywhere and you can't catch it. You go like this and it's gone. There was a time where we were down in Waimanalo and Kavika had you buy it at the mall, the little kiosk, and you fill it up with air. The commercial makes it seem real easy. You take this tube thing and it looks like a little cocoon and you pick it up and it fills with air and it's supposed to be a cot of some kind. But he was there and it wasn't very windy that day and he was like 40 times going up and down. He was getting exhausted. And he was trying to impress his girlfriend, I think. But he was running up and down. He was trying to fill this thing with air and he couldn't do it. And I was like, this is embarrassing. I will break up with you right now. But good thing he loves God and that's what she sees in him. But he couldn't get the wind. The chasing after wind is exhausting. And we can't grasp life. Solomon is saying, it's just like the chasing after wind. It's exhausting. You can't win against wind. And so we pick up our text and we continue in verse 1 of chapter 2. To get into the mind, to the life, to the focus of Solomon, he says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find what is good. So Solomon is like, not only am I on campus, I'm not just a campus student educating myself, but I'm going to head out the party life. He says, I'm going to test what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. You ever go out and party out, and it feels good temporarily, you come home, you wake up in the morning, you're like, it's not only meaningless, but my head hurts. Where's the toilet? Verse 2 says, laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? Which is a good question. That's a fair question. What does pleasure accomplish? Temporary stimulation? A natural rush? A substitute for something maybe supernatural? It says, I tried cheering myself with wine. I got into drinking. Pour me another shot, bartender. This will certainly make me happy. Fix me one of those Mai Tais, or your ties, or our ties. And he goes on, he says, to fill my myself with wine and embrace folly. It's like, I'm going to get in trouble on purpose. This is fun. Surely this will fill my life up. My mind still guiding me with wisdom. That's a funny thing to say when you're embracing doing something bad. I got a lot of wisdom in me. It shows how ignorant even the king of all kings at this time physically is even a little stupid. It says, I want to see what was good for people to undergo under the heavens during a few days of my life. I just wanted to know if I could taste a little heaven right here on earth. This temporary moment of satisfaction. And that's why most of us as young people, we turn into sexual desires, getting drunk, partying out, bungee jumping, dead falling, whatever that means, getting into one of those squirrel suits and jumping off a plane, doing the crazy things, zip lining. These things are fun, but we do them because they give us a rush. I had a brother from the Phoenix church actually called me up and say, bro, I know you're probably busy right now, but you want to go down and swim with the sharks with me? I said, no, bro. I like my spam right here at home. I don't want to go swim with sharks. He goes, but you don't understand the rush. I said, I do, bro. That's why I'm not rushing right over there. Yes, I do. And so continuing on here, this raises the question, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of life? I'm 48. I've had a business. I've had too many cars. I have 2 houses. And yet, none of it helps me, move my bowels. None of it makes me smarter. None of it makes me better looking. None of this really helps me today. I have problems bending over in ways that I used to not have problems. These cars and these houses, they don't help me at all. I've had many different hairstyles, but still my hair doesn't look good. I'm like, what is the meaning of all these things? I've been saving money and then I spend money and it comes and it goes. All these different things, like where is it going? Life is slipping through my fingers. What is the meaning of life? Let's pick up our text and continue in verse 4. I undertook great projects. Like it wasn't enough for me to finish school and party out. I got a job as an architecture. I undergo great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I got into the wine business because the wine tastes good when I was back in my college days. I built parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees. I started my own vegetable company and my fruit company. I made reservoir, got into the dynamics of water reservation. And I grew groves and flourishing trees. I got into crops. I got into planting orchards. I bought male and female servants. Wow, that's nice that you have that kind of money lying around like that. He says, I bought servants, many of them, to serve me. He says, in my house, I also own more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. He says, and I have the nicest, biggest ranches. You guys should have seen it. There are animals everywhere. A moo-moo here and a moo-moo there. It's awesome. I amassed, verse 8 says, I amassed silver and gold for myself. I had all kinds of savings and investments. Guys, I am doing good. I am on top of the world. Surely this will satisfy me. Surely I won't have any more problems. And then we pick up, he says, I acquired male and female singers. Now, this is kind of a weird thing here. Like, how do you acquire male and female? For us, we go on Pandora, we go to all these things, and we download Beyonce. But for him, he was like, no, I don't download. I have them imported. The singers, Beyonce comes to me. Okay, Beyonce, do it. Beyonce's like, download it right there. And you see how amazing Solomon's life is, right? He's like, just make the hits come out right here in front of me. Surely that will satisfy my life. Live music at my house. With all my servants. All my gold. Look at my rivers. Are you hungry? Go pick a fruit from my orchard. No problem. I own the business. In verse 9, he says, I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem. He says, that's not enough. I want to be famous. The most famous. So now he's got fame and fortune. Then he says, in all this, my wisdom stayed with me. He said, I still was wise. You got to wonder, what wisdom is he talking about? That God put a sense, something in his mind, still to make a decision. He felt good, he felt up, and he felt down. He undertook projects. You see, the life reflects the life of the man today. We go to school, we get educated, we get a job, we get the BMW, we get the awesome wife, We conserve. We have a moped. We have a crotch rocket bike. Some people a crotch rocket moped. We have all these things. We invest in property. We start a side business. We start the shares in the market, whether it goes up or down. We take these high risks in our life.
Yeah.
And yet, still Solomon's saying, this is utterly meaningless. Like, I am empty. I thought maybe I'd have a wife and a kid, then I had 10 of them, and life just is still meaningless. I think I know what's going on with Solomon here. He goes to bed with the finest linen sheets, silk brought in from China. And he's laying down and he's crying. It's like, I don't know what to do anymore. I've achieved everything, and yet still I feel I've achieved nothing. I feel empty inside. You ever feel empty inside even though you have so much?
Yeah.
You go out, and if we're being honest with yourself, we pretend we're a lot better than what we really are. We flaunt our feathers a little bit more. We ruffle ourselves like the mating call of a frog, going around trying to be a little bit more than what we are. Then we go home and we realize there's only like 2 or 3 people in my life of the hundreds of people that I encounter that really care about who I am. Life is empty.
Yeah.
The person I'm with doesn't even love me. They don't care about my interests. They don't ask me about how I feel, truly. They never ask me about what makes my mind click. When we get lonely, there's betrayal and adultery and all these different things that happen in life. Why am I empty? I want to ask you, what makes you feel stimulated? What makes you feel empty this morning? What actually does it for you? Today, we have a world that turns to stimulating themselves even to the point of prostitution, taking drugs in a mass scale, suicide, all kinds of different ways that people turn to in the world that have nothing to do with God's original intention, His original plan for us. And I see that this separates us from the Lord. In verse 9, which was taken up from verse 10, it says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desire. So this guy can look at an elephant and a 2-horned unicorn and go, I want that, and it's his.
Yeah.
And I want a burger, boom, give me the whole cow. Whatever Solomon wanted, he didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine his wife's going to the store, to the malls? It's like, whatever you want, honey. He's probably the one that invented online service. I mean, this guy he had everything. He says, I refused my heart no pleasure. He's like, everything I want, I got it. Every single thing. That's what our NBA stars today, our overpaid baseball players and our football players are doing. Our MMA guys, our guys who invent rocket and Apple, they get tempted by the world and they want more and more. We're talking about modern day people. He says here, and this was the reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all my hands had done and what I had to toil to achieve, everything was still meaningless, a chasing after wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. And so even Solomon, with all his greatness, had to pause. One day, everybody in this room will have to stop and contemplate their life. You ever just be the guy or the girl in the sitting rock, just contemplating, going, why did I do that? When I look back in my life, like, was jumping off that roof really necessary? Was getting into that fight really productive? Did I really need to drink a pint of alcohol? How did that help my kidney? We have to contemplate our lives. And so Solomon right here is saying, when I stopped and I surveyed my life, I realized that I was going nowhere. And so that brings us to our first point. Survey without delay. We need to stop and just take the time to rush to stop. For the first time in our life, I want us to hurry up and stop and think. Survey without delay. I know it sounds weird, but I want you to hurry up your fastest to stop and go, wow, where am I really at? Where is my life really at? What have I amounted to thus far? In 1987, I moved to an island called Saipan, which is north of Guam, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. There was 16 chains of islands. And the first job I got was working for my biological father and the shipping business. And that went south very fast. So I had to take the first job I could get. I went on to the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, the Tribune, and I found a job opening that just posted. It says, looking for highly energetic servant man. I was like, highly energetic, I'm kind of a servant, and I'm a guy, I'll do it. So I went there and I was like, for sure I'm going to get this. I showered that day and even brushed my teeth. I accidentally combed my hair and put on some nice clothes and even ironed it. And when I went there was this line wrapped around the building of highly energetic men, servants. I was like, surely I'm never going to get this job. And so, the position was only for one person, and it didn't pay minimum wage. It didn't pay anything. And so minimum wage at that time was $3.35. And that was just the raise, right? So they kept going. The guys were getting out of the interview. It was like they walked in, get out, walked in, get out. I was like, what's going on there? So the guy that was hiring was actually doing the hiring himself. And he was asking different questions like, which way do you start sweeping? From the corner or from the middle of the room? Where does the sun rise? Where does the sun set? What temperature should you cook? He was asking questions like, he was looking for some special cat. I walked in, it's my turn to interview, and he asked me something about bionics. And I was like, I don't know. Can you teach me? He says, yes, go over there and fill out the rest of the paperwork. You're hired. The rest of you are dismissed. Wow. And he hired me because I didn't know what I was talking about. And I wanted somebody that didn't know what they were talking about that would actually admit it. That's what he was looking for. He was a man of truth, and he was a deep thinker. And so I worked for Larry, and his name is Larry Hublum, and he's the H in DHL. And I didn't know all that he owned. All I knew is that he was some dude in Saipan who loved to fly planes. He had a collection of them. Eventually he took me and goes, do you like airplanes? I said, no. Airplanes, they kill people every now and then, and I'm scared of them. He goes, thank you for being honest. Let me take you on one of my airplanes. So I was like, oh no. Okay, you're still paying me, right? Yes. And so I went and he says, look at my collection of airplanes. He had a plane like Amelia Earhart. He had a light glider plane. He had like a 747. He had a Learjet, quite a few of them. And I was like, what do you do for a living, man? Are you like the boss? He goes, you can call me that. I have some say, and my words hold a little bit weight in this company. I was like, great. You and I together, we're going to go places. And this guy's probably thinking, what an idiot. So I learned a little bit more about Larry. He loves black pepper. He hates cucumber. Then I noticed something about him. He started changing. He started going to the Philippines and Indonesia. He started going to the Carolina Islands. He started going out to Palau. It turns out that this guy was messing around and started having all these girlfriends. And so he had kids all over the place. Then he crashes one time in his plane, and he has to get plastic surgery, and he almost died. The second time, he almost died as well. He had to get plastic surgery again. The third time he died, I was already living in San Francisco, and I quit the job. But he's a guy who made over $230 billion a year. Later on, I was like, hey, this guy's in the news, like even in the mainland. I'm like, I used to be personal servant man for that guy. Yeah, minimum wage. And I said, yeah, he was the, you remember him? He told me he's the H in DHL, and everyone was like, you work for Larry Hublum? I didn't realize that he was a rich guy. I just thought he was a guy. Because he took me and we went hang out, and when I ate the cucumber, he was like, don't eat that cucumber. Eat black pepper. It's got lots of chromium. And he used to talk to me about weird stuff. And then to find out he owned Continental Air Micronesia when it was called Continental Air Micronesia, and he made his fame and fortune because people were complaining, and the government was losing money because they would have these tax papers go sent out. You owe $10,000. You better make this payment by the 1st of May. The problem is the letter didn't get there till the 30th of June. So he decided, I know. I'll use my money to pay somebody's airfare, and then they're allowed up to 350 pounds of luggage at that time, and then I'll just fill it up with mail, and I'll give them a round-trip ticket, and I'll pay them to do that. Well, that's how overnight service came about. So Matson and PM&O and American President Lines and Pasha and all these big shippers realized we can send our envelopes to Larry Hublum. He'll have these human mules pull them across, and we'll have air freight. So he really revolutionized air freight, and that's how he made his $235 and above billion a year. Well, he had $350 million in his savings account, and he actually gave the large sum of money, like $350, $500 million to places like University of California.